Yay. You see that, church? Because you gave, that beautiful family got all that in 3 days. 3 days. You supported the people that went to do it. You gave extra funds to make it happen. Thank you so much. Also, when you came in today, because we did a firm foundation, gave them a good roof, a good place, and we did help them economically for that. It is huge there for them and this sweet little family. We now have an opportunity to also pray and maybe help do a spiritual foundation for them as well. So when you came in, this is rare. I would hold on to it, maybe frame it. We don't do paper anymore around here. So we normally do our app, but this will remind us to pray for them, and you have their actual names and faces to do that with. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you for giving. And that is because you gave. So that's awesome. Speaking of our app, my name is Carrie. Welcome to SCF. Thank you for being here this morning. If you're new, we do have an app that we use all the time for communications, and we encourage you to get that. We have a QR code for that as well. And if you're already on the app, I just want to draw your attention to our events button on the bottom. So each month, at the beginning of the month, we get a prayer focus. Our prayer focus this month is peacemakers, and the word itself is an action. So under events, we have some things that we can push you toward as an action this month to help us be peacemakers in our community. So if you go to the events tab in the bottom of your app, you can click that and you will find the first one is Angel Tree. I'd like to point your attention to. Angel Tree helps kids in the 89431 zip code and kids that have a parent incarcerated to be able to get a present from their parent. And it's huge in life. Just like we gave a house to a family, that is a building block to later be able to speak into their life spiritually as well. And you get to pray for them. So when you sign up for Angel Tree, you get that name and you can pray for them all throughout the season and then some as God leads you. So we have Angel Tree. The new return date is December 1st, so when you sign up on the app, bring your package back unwrapped, and we'll take care of it for you. So thank you so much for that. The other thing I'd like to point you to for peacemaking in our community and helping someone else have peace in their lives, and you guys are so generous. We have been so generous at SCF, but is our Benevolence Sunday. So every first Sunday of the month, we also do benevolence, and we specifically give it towards our food bank. We serve over about 130 people every week, 30 families, let's put it that way, families every week. A lot of you serve in that ministry here on Wednesdays, and thank you so much for giving. So if you'd like to give a little bit extra above and beyond, you can do that. There's also an offering box out in the cafe. Another thing, too, that is coming up, everything is found on the app, is Baptism Sunday. So we will have Baptism Sunday the week before Thanksgiving. There will also be an informational meeting the week before that. So get on your app and sign up if you'd like to be baptized and go public with your faith in Christ. We do have another one coming up. It is Men's Connect, Amazing Race. So it sounds like the men heard how fun the women are having at their big connect. And so now they're going to get with it. And I spoke with the guy in charge, and he said, bring all the men you can. If they can read a phone and sign up, bring them. So bring your sons, bring your nephews, bring your neighbors, and you will get a barbecue. He also said, bring a coat, because you will be outside at some point. So this will be next Sunday. I know my kids are going, my boys and my husband, because the Packers have a bye. So... And also going on tonight, which every first Sunday. So the first Sundays are great to come to, so great. Come back tonight. Come back tonight and learn, because as peacemakers, that we're called to be peacemakers, we have to understand sometimes why people think the way they think, the theology behind it. We are going to learn about Islam and Judaism, and I think that is an extremely important theology to learn on the why, and so that we can maybe go forward in relationships with others in this time that we live in, with love, grace, and as the heart of a servant. So come back tonight at 6 p.m. for theology for everyone. Jason will be back to do that. And right now, I'd like to invite Rich up on the stage as he will come and prepare our hearts for our worship service today. Thank you for joining us at SCF.
Morning. So who's pumped about that extra hour of sleep? Who just had an extra hour to be distracted this morning? Okay, so today we're going to get ready for preparation. We just want to get our hearts and our minds ready to connect with, to worship God through song, to, kind of take a look at His Word and get connected there. So in preparation for that, I'm going to ask you to indulge with me for a second here on a little exercise. So I want you to get something in your brain, something sensory, okay? Like for me, I noticed this morning I just really enjoyed the smell of the coffee when I was brewing it. I don't know if you're a coffee drinker, but maybe you're sensitive to that. Maybe you're one of those campfire people. You just, the smell of the campfire. I just want you to get kind of a smell or a taste kind of in your brain. Is that making sense? You got to engage with me. Is that making sense? Thank you. Okay, now here's what I'm going to invite you to do. Okay, if you're comfortable, if you're not, that's fine. You don't have to play along. But if you could just kind of close your eyes for a second. Sort of take a deep breath in, just kind of get yourself relaxed, and just kind of think about the sensory experience of that smell or that taste that I asked you to think about. Just another kind of deep breath in, just kind of think about that experience. Okay, today we're going to take a look at a psalm. Alex is going to put that up for us. It says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in Him. Fear the Lord, you and His godly people. For those who fear Him will have all they need. Even strong young lions sometimes go hungry, but those who trust in the Lord will lack no good thing." I just invite you to think about, as we try and engage our brains in this morning, as well as our hearts and our souls in this morning, I just invite you to think about the pleasurable experience you had thinking about that taste or that smell. And I just invite you to associate that with your relationship with God, because taste and see that the Lord is good. God wants us to engage with Him. It's not some, intellectual exercise. It really is sort of an experience. And as we engage in worship this morning, I'm just going to invite you to focus on experiencing God. Just as you experience a taste or smell that's good, experience the goodness of God in this morning's worship.
Well, I invite you to stand with us as we glorify our God together.
Weapon that silences the enemy. Let praise be a weapon that conquers all anxiety. Let it rise. Let praise arise. We sing your name in the dark and it changes everything. We sing with all we are and we claim your victory. Let it rise, let praise arise. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. And fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift Him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, let faith be the song that overcomes the raging sea. Let faith be the song that calms the storm inside of me. Let it rise. Let faith arise, yeah. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. For fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift Him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. This is what living looks like. This is what freedom feels like. This is what heaven sounds like. We praise you, we praise you. We'll see you break down every wall. We'll watch the giants fall. For fear cannot survive when we praise you. The God of breakthroughs on our side. Forever lift him high. With all creation cry, God, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh, we praise you. Oh. The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. Oh, my God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will win. Oh, I'm not backing down from any giants. 'Cause I know how this story ends. Yes, I know how this story ends. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, oh, oh. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I put my faith in Jesus. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. I've still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I built my life on Jesus. 'Cause he's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. I've still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I built my life on Jesus. And he's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail.
Came and wind blew, my house was built on you. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Rain came and wind blew, my house was built on you. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Yeah, I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause I'm standing strong on you. Yeah, I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause my house is built on you. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. 'Cause he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail.
Hey, it was beautiful to worship with you this morning. Before you're seated, why don't you greet someone around you?
We're exploring 3 books in the Bible known as the wisdom literature: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. And they're all asking the question, what does it mean to live well in this world?
So we've looked at Proverbs, who you could think of as a bright young teacher.
She's all about pursuing wisdom, an attribute of God that's woven into reality. And she's optimistic that if you use wisdom, you will build a successful life.
But then we come to Ecclesiastes, who's more like this sharp, middle-aged critic. And he says,
You think using wisdom will bring you success. You'd better think again, because life here under the sun is meaningless.
And that's a phrase he uses a lot in this book.
but to understand this book, we have to realize first that we're hearing two voices.
So first there's the teacher, and we've been calling him the critic. He's the main voice in the book.
But he is introduced to us by another figure, the author. And he's the one who's collected the critic's words and then at the end of the book summarizes everything and gets the final word.
So why does the author want us to hear from the critic?
Well, he wants to turn your view of the world upside down, and he's going to let the critic explore three really disturbing things about the world.
And we should warn you, these are pretty intense.
Yeah, so the first is the march of time, or as the critic says,
Generations come and generations go, but the earth, it's been here long before us and will be long after. No one remembers people from long ago, and all the people yet to come, they too will be forgotten by those who come after them.
So, on a cosmic scale, you and I, we are just a blip. Stars are born, and then they die and form planets which orbit new stars, and those planets, they change over time and eventually burn up.
And amidst this cosmic backdrop, my entire existence is like a blink in time.
Which leads to the critic's second disturbing observation, that we are all going to die.
Humans face the same fate as the animals, death. All people, the righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, those who offer sacrifices to God and those who do not, they all share the same destiny. All this activity and madness, then we all join the dead.
Man, this book is depressing.
And so is the final disturbing thing for the critic, and that is life's random nature.
So in Proverbs, life isn't random. There's a clear cause and effect relationship between doing the right thing and being rewarded.
But the fact is that life doesn't always work that way. The critic has observed a glitch in the system. He calls it chance, or in his words,
The race doesn't always go to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor does food always come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the educated. Time and chance happen to them all.
So his point is that you can't really control anything in life. It's just way too unpredictable.
So if I want to master life,
Then you're setting yourself up for a fall. Now, throughout the book, the critic uses a metaphor to tie together all of these disturbing ideas. Nearly 40 times he says that everything in life is hevel. It's a Hebrew word that means smoke or vapor. Like smoke, life is beautiful and mysterious.
it takes one shape, and before you know it, it takes a new shape.
And smoke looks solid, but try and grab it, it'll slip right through your fingers.
And when you're stuck in the thick of it, like fog, it's impossible to see clearly.
Now, our modern translations have lost the metaphor, and they usually translate hevel as meaningless. But if you read closely, the critic isn't saying that life has no meaning, but rather that its meaning is never clear. Like smoke, life is confusing, it's disorienting and uncontrollable.
So, what are we supposed to do with all of this?
Well, surprisingly, the critic first of all acknowledges the perspective of Proverbs. He says it's a really good idea to learn wisdom and to live in the fear of the Lord.
Really? I mean, he just said that doesn't guarantee success.
But he knows it's the right thing to do. But secondly, and more often, he says that since you can't control your life, you should stop trying. Learn to hold things with an open hand because you really only have control over one thing, and that's your attitude towards the present moment. Stop worrying, he says, and choose to enjoy a good conversation with a friend, or the sun on your face, or a good meal with people that you care about.
The simple things in life.
Yes, and both the good things and the bad, because both are rich gifts from God. And that's the surprising wisdom of Ecclesiastes.
Listening to the critic is painful and can lead you into some dark places.
And that's why the author speaks up at the end of the book. He doesn't want you to lose hope. He wants to make you humble into someone who trusts that life has meaning even when you can't make sense of it, that one day God will clear the hevel and bring his justice on all that we've done. And so he tells us that the proper response to all of this is to fear the Lord and keep his commandments.
And that's the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, there's one more voice in the Bible's wisdom literature, and that's the book of Job.
And he will bring us the final, much-needed perspective on our journey into wisdom.
Well, good morning again. So, I love little kids. Jason and Dean and Nick, they got to bring us the bad news. And so I'm going to jump in here, hopefully, today and give us a little, I don't know if optimism is the right word, but hopefully we're going to have a little bit of fun this morning and think about some stuff. So a couple things before I get started, I just want you to think about as far as resources go. So that video is from what's called the Bible Project, and we've used Bible Project videos lots and lots of times, but if it's a resource you're not familiar with, it's just they do a great job of explaining concepts and helping you understand big picture as far as certain books of the Bible, or all the books of the Bible actually. Just a great resource. So if it's something you haven't tapped into, I just invite you to take a look at the Bible Project. The other thing I want to put in the back of your brain, I talked about, when you worship, part of it is engaging with God. So that last song that you're probably not going to remember a whole lot of by the time I get done rambling today, it's called A Firm Foundation, He Won't. And I stole this from backstage, so it's got all kinds of stuff on there. So apparently it was played in the key of C at 150 beats per minute. So I don't know how relevant that is to your review of it. The thing I'm inviting you to think about, and the reason I mention it, I thought that was super funny in my brain. Like, there's a lot going on up here, and I'm super amused. Apparently, you're not. But at any rate, the reason I mentioned that song, called Firm Foundation, He Won't, is because, after today, if you get a chance to go home, hopefully most of you will make it home today. When you get home, if you get a chance to go on the internet and just kind of look at the lyrics of this song, I would invite you to revisit it because a lot of the words in there are going to connect a lot to what I talk about today. And if you're a music kind of person, maybe you can listen to a different version of it or the similar version or whatever the case is, sort of sing along and take a look at the words and really sort of engage with God. So I'm just going to invite you to take a look at that, and then hopefully I don't get in trouble for stealing church property. So today, like I said, I want to, there's a switch in the back. It's a light switch. And it says, stage power, do not turn off. And every Sunday that I teach, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, because two things are going on in my brain in regard to that note. I'm like, do we just got people running through the building randomly, just flicking switches on and off? We got to tell them, not that one. You know, and I'm sure there's a story associated with it. I've never had a chance to ask Mike about it. But I just thought about this idea, like we're just, and I'm going to reference this again when I talk about free will, we're just naughty by nature. You know what I mean? Like you just, you know, I know some of you are rule followers. Who's rule followers? Like you will never touch that switch. You won't even look at the switch. You're like, nope. Okay, how many of you are like, just one time? Just, all right. Okay, sorry, Mike, I probably just complicated your life quite a bit because somebody will sneak back there. All right, that has nothing to do with anything. So here's what I'm going to invite you to do, okay? Because I want to introduce a concept. So if you could just stand up, I'm not going to make you talk to anybody. Don't worry about that. If you could just stand up. If you don't want to, that's fine. So if you turn around, yep, there you go. And you look in the center of the back room, and you probably can't see her very well because she's in the shadow there. So that's Gianna, and she's running the camera. Okay, everybody wave at Gianna. Apparently this is her first Sunday. She had no idea I was doing this. Hopefully she doesn't opt to leave the church. So Gianna's job is to keep track of me for the people at home. And so about 4 weeks ago, I got to run the camera. I got the opportunity to serve back there. And I think Jason, I don't know how many cups of coffee he had, but I think he walked about 42 miles up here. So it was a very active role that I had in the service. So everybody wave at John again. Okay, go ahead and have a seat. So the thing I want you to think about, because you're like, wow, he's really going sideways today. The thing I'm inviting you to think about is, so for the remainder of this morning, you know, as I move around here, Gianna's job is to keep track of me. And so she, like I said, she has a very active role. Now, there are some other folks in this room. Hopefully, you know, you woke up when we stood up and all that sort of stuff. There are some other folks in this room that will have what I call a pretty passive role. Like, you know, you're just kind of here, and maybe you're listening, maybe you're engaging, maybe you're taking notes, maybe you have some other responsibility. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's just tons of volunteers doing all kinds of stuff throughout this building. So there's this idea of folks that are sort of actively involved, okay, and then some folks that are just a little more passive. And I think a lot of us approach our spirituality like that, and I'm going to hopefully make a point, talk a little bit about that. So on top of the Bible Project, listening to the song Firm Foundation, and now remembering that Gianna has one of the most active roles in this room, I'm pretty sure most of you are like, maxed out, Rich. That's no need for any more information. Just kind of set all that stuff aside. If you're good at compartmentalizing, that's great, because today we're going to take a look at Ecclesiastes 9. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about is, it's a concept I talk a lot about in the work that I do with folks, is most of us don't have a solid understanding of how much influence we have, and at the same time, how little influence we have. And one of the illustrations I like to use to help people figure this out, I had Mike make me a little graphic here. So if you just think about life events, I'm just going through life, and sometimes good stuff happens. And good stuff happens because I make effective choices. Supposedly, and I don't know, I'm always interested when we quote a dead person. I'm like, who wrote it down? But supposedly Thomas Jefferson said, the harder I work, the more good luck I seem to have. And whether he said it or not, I think it's a genius statement. So sometimes in life, good stuff happens because I make effective choices. You know, I work hard, whatever. So sometimes good stuff just happens because of my choices. Sometimes bad stuff happens because of my choices. And I'm fascinated how often we make bad decisions and bad stuff happens, and then we label it spiritual warfare. Like the devil's attacking me. And I heard this phrase a long time ago. I shared it, I think, last time I taught, but people who play stupid games win stupid prizes. And that was one of those things I was like, that's a gem. Okay, because sometimes bad stuff happens in my life because, frankly, I just make ineffective choices. Okay? Sometimes good stuff happens in my life just because. You can call it a blessing of God. It's just whatever. Good fortune. I walked across the parking lot. There's a $20 bill laying there. Whatever it is. Yeah, I didn't really do anything to influence that. It just something good happened in my life. I think a lot of times that is the generosity of God. That's where I'm going to credit it, and that's okay. And sometimes bad stuff happens just because, not because of necessarily any decisions I made or choices I made. This could, in fact, be spiritual warfare, or it could be the fact that you share a planet with 8 billion self-absorbed, unaware people. So sometimes bad stuff just happens because humans act like humans, okay? A lot of times, this concept gets sort of described in spiritual terms as the tension between God's sovereignty and people's free will. So the idea of, God is absolutely sovereign and in control. Nothing happens without him allowing it. And yet somehow, I could run back here right now and turn off the light switch. So somehow I have some free choice in this thing. I get to do what I want, And this is one of those things that's it's a mystery in our faith. And I'm at a point on my faith journey where I'm just really focused on embracing mystery. Like, we can have a logical conversation, a theological conversation. I know there's some folks out there that are, study the Bible a lot longer, a lot more in depth than I have, and they like to talk about these things. For me, it's just one of those things that, this is what faith is. Not everything makes sense. Not everything has a logical, scientific explanation. I genuinely believe that God is absolutely sovereign. Nothing happens that God's not aware of. Nothing happens that surprises God. Nothing happens that God isn't prepared for. And yet, God said, you know what, Rich, this is how much I value you. I'm going to let you choose. You can choose me. You can make lots of life choices. And some good stuff will happen as a result of that. Some not good stuff will happen as a result of that. But God never becomes less sovereign, and I, in essence, never lose my free will. And that's just this mystery, And when I think about faith, when we dive into Ecclesiastes 9 here, I just invite you to, at some level embrace that mystery. Because at the end of the day, the question I pose is, how much control do I really have? So one of the phrases I use a lot in the work that I do is I invite people to consider this idea. I do not control the world I live in. I don't control the political climate. I don't control the economy. I don't control the weather. I certainly don't control anybody else's behavior. I have absolute 100% control over my response to it. And this becomes a very empowering concept because my response is in essence what empowers me to make choices about how I'm going to utilize my free will. So the thing I'm going to invite us to think about today is my response active or passive? And is my response influenced by joy, faith, and the wisdom or understanding of God? And so those are the things I want to explore this morning. Because this idea of recognizing that, the one thing I control in this world is me, it has a potential to be, like I said, it's very empowering. And allows me to be incredibly objective. Because I don't function out of guilt and shame and judgment and all those sorts of things. I function out of choice. I recognize that the world is going to function however it functions. And I get to choose then how I will respond to it. And like I said, I want to be very conscientious about what influences my response. What is it that allows me to make the choices that I make? And in simple terms, the way I describe it in my office is, this allows me to live a life of intentional choice, very empowering, versus emotional response, very disempowering. Now I'm just that ship is, tossed about by the ocean or whatever. So the stimuli gets to determine my response versus me being intentional about my response. So like I said, I'm able to get out of guilt and shame and obligation, all that sort of stuff, and instead focus on how do I intentionally want to respond to the world that I live in. So most of us function with very little awareness, very little intentionality. It's what I call the stimuli response model. Something happens, I respond. Something happens, I respond. Something happens, I respond. I'm going to invite us to view our spirituality a little bit differently. So the idea of making an intentional choice, of determining how I will respond to the world I live in, allows me to more interactively or more effectively interact with God. See, I get to, in essence, give and accept what each of us contributes to this. So one of the illustrations that I like to use that, and I always wonder, I don't know how your guys' brain works, but how many of you wonder if, Noah was God's first pick? Do you think he offered that job to some other people who are like, nah, what? I don't know. Those are the kinds of things I think about. Not probably profound theological concepts, but just, curious human behavior. Now, one of the things that I think about in regard to this, and hopefully this helps sort of connect some dots for you guys, is God performed a miracle. I mean, and I'm not an engineer or that sort of thing. I just, based on my reading of the description of the ark and the building of it, this was a pretty miraculous feat. I mean, I realize with today's technology and today's industry and all that sorts of stuff, probably not nearly as big a project, okay? But God performed a miracle by having Noah build this ark. I mean, this is just a miraculous thing. And it just makes me wonder, like, when the dimensions were given to Noah, I just wonder, like, could he even fathom, like, what this thing was? You know what I'm saying? Like, how amazing was this in that moment? And I think that's one of the things we lose sight of when we read the Bible. It's like, this was a pretty miraculous feat. So I want to recognize the sovereignty of God, God's ability to perform a miracle. Here's the thing I'm inviting you to think about, though. Noah's the one who got up every morning and sawed lumber and pounded nails and did what he had to do to build the ark. Noah had a role in it. God, in essence, said, hey, do you want to be part of a miracle? And like I said, I don't know. I don't know if God offered that to some other people who are like, nah, thanks, I'm good. I don't know if Noah was the first choice or not. That has nothing to do with any of the, concept, I guess. I just can't get it out of my brain. So the thing about it, though, is like Noah made a choice of how he was going to respond. This thing was presented to him, and he chose to, pursue probably what was just this. I mean, I guess I'm struggling with the idea of, what was it like to be posed with that question? Was Noah like, I got to go home and talk to my wife? Like, was he just like, okay, God, let's do this thing? I don't know what his response was, what his thought process was in the deal. I just don't think we appreciate how miraculous this is. And that's the value of, like, when we read the Bible, I invite you to think about context and what was actually going on at that time. Because like I said, with today's technology, building an ark is, not nearly as, amazing as it was in that moment. So the thing I'm inviting you to think about that is, Noah made the choice to be not a passive observer, but an active participant. He was a part of God's work. He was a part of God's miraculous activities. And as a result of that, we got to see some pretty cool stuff. So as we think about this idea of, how am I going to be more intentional? How am I going to be more interactive? We're going to take a look at Ecclesiastes 9. I think it's going to give us some good things to think about. Because in Ecclesiastes 9, we're reminded of some of the consistent themes that have been discussed in the previous 8 chapters. Like I said, those guys, got to share with you some stuff. We're all, given this opportunity. So Jason used this illustration. How many of you guys like pickle juice? I'm telling you, it works. Okay, I mean, it may be all psychosomatic, but I have a lot of leg cramp issues, and it works. So Jason's not making that up. It's not some, wives' tale. I know some of you question his Southern heritage, and like, okay, Jason, drink some pickle juice. But it works. So at any rate, so Jason talked to you a little bit about if you want to deal with muscle cramps, you want to drink some pickle juice. I want to add to that a little bit. If you want to quench your thirst, drink some lemonade. Okay. So this morning, I think we're going to get to do a little bit of both. So a little pickle juice, a little lemonade today. Probably not a good mixture together, so keep them in separate glasses. So we're going to start out by taking a look at Ecclesiastes 9, starting out in verse 1. It says, "This too I carefully explored. Even though the actions of godly and wise people are in God's hands, no one knows whether God will show them favor. The same destiny ultimately awaits everyone, whether righteous or wicked, good or bad, ceremonial, clean or unclean, religious or irreligious. Good people will receive the same treatment as sinners, and people who make promises to God are treated like people who don't. It seems so wrong that everyone under the sun suffers the same fate. Already twisted by evil, people choose their own mad course, for they have no hope. There's nothing ahead but death anyways. There's hope only for the living. As they say, it's better to be a live dog than a dead lion. The living at least know they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, nor are they remembered. Whatever they did in their lifetime, loving, hating, envying, is all long gone. They no longer play a part in anything here on earth." So I can't remember if it was Nick or Dean, or maybe both of them said it. So human beings have a 100% mortality rate. I'm not a big fan of absolute language, because very rarely is it always and very rarely is it never. I'm going to go ahead and say this. Everybody in this room will die. I'm comfortable with that. I'm willing to put some money on it even. It's going to happen. Okay, not sure when. Some of us are way closer to the finish line than we are the start line. Some of you are like, I might have crossed the finish line. My body just doesn't know it. So it's going to happen. And so the thing that Solomon's talking about here is, what are you going to do between now and then? Okay, because from the moment you're born, you start dying. And so it really is that idea of what am I going to do with that? The point that he's trying to make here, and I think this is very intriguing to me, is the dead no longer have influence. Okay? The living, however, continue to, and the words he uses, play a part in anything here on earth. There's a very significant contrast between this idea of the live dog. Okay? In those times, the dog was one of the most despised animals. Who's the dog lovers? You actually refer to it as though it's a human being. Okay, we can talk. But there are folks that, love dogs now. Okay, back in the day, the dog was just this irritant, I don't want to say rodent, but just, very little purpose, okay? And then, of course, when you look at the lion, this proud, probably the most revered beast of the time, okay? And he makes this contrast. He said, you know what, it's better to be a live dog where you actually have something going on versus this majestic dead beast. Because all we can do is talk about how great the beast used to be. The live dog still has a role. So there's a very significant contrast that he's making here. And what he's trying to emphasize is what dead is not. Okay, and I think a lot of times when we read this, we're just like, oh my gosh, I get it, I'm going to die. Like, you got to keep reminding me. But the dead does not have hope. The dead does not have influence. The dead does not have emotions and experiences. The dead does not have joy. The emphasis he's making is on what life offers. Life is not dead. This is the contrast he's trying to make. Sure, we're all going to face mortal destiny. We'll all experience pain and sorrow in life. And we all get the opportunity to live life. Well, living, we get the opposite of dead. We do have hope. We do have influence. We do get to have emotion and experiences. We do get to have joy. We do get to play a part on earth. And that's one of the things that's been mentioned several times. We're not waiting to go to heaven. We have the opportunity to bring, God to earth right now. We get the opportunity to represent him well, to interact with him, to engage with him, to reflect him, to share him. So it's not a waiting game. It's an active opportunity to be a part of something. We're not building an ark, but we get an opportunity to do some pretty miraculous stuff if we partner up with God. So life is not dead. That's the contrast he's trying to create. See, the living have opportunity for community, service, joy, the pursuit of God. I just invite you to take a look at this. This is what we're talking about. This is the living. Choose community. Connect with folks. Follow Jesus. Be a part of something. Join mission. Find some purpose in your life. Live generously. Make the world better than you found it. Share the experiences you've had with God with a friend. I'm telling you, and I say this probably just most of the times I teach up here, you can argue about the authenticity of the Bible. You can argue about historical facts. You can argue about whether Jesus was a good moral teacher or whether he was the Messiah. You can have all kinds of arguments with people about all kinds of theological, God, spiritual stuff. You cannot argue with my lived experience. This actually happened in my life. And when we talk about this stuff, the reason this is so important to us as a church is because this is you can't argue with that. I have deep-spirited friendships. I have seen the generosity of God. I have seen life transformed, including my own. So we can have all kinds of conversations about stuff. You cannot argue with my lived experience. This really happened. And that's the power of this journey. That's why I invite you, figure out where you're at there and keep moving forward. It's a very powerful concept. That's what the living get to have. So if I consider I don't control the world I live in, I control my response to it. Is my response influenced by my relationship with God? And in Ecclesiastes 9, it gives us opportunity. I just worked it into like 3 questions that might help us make this shift from sort of a passive position or passive observer to a more active participant. So the first the first question I had is my response influenced by joy? Is my response influenced by joy? Nick talked a little bit about this last week, but in Ecclesiastes 9, 7 through 10, it says this. So go ahead And again, like Jason emphasized, pause and take a look at some of the language. Go ahead. This is an active thing. He's not saying, hey, wait around for something to happen. No, he says, so go ahead. Eat your food with joy and drink your wine with a happy heart, for God approves of this. Wear fine clothes with a splash of cologne. Live happily with the woman you love through all the meaningless days of life that God has given you under the sun. Now, I read this a couple of times, okay? And I've been married 39 years now. I think I've told you before, I made 2 super spontaneous decisions in my life. They both paid off super well. I had somebody in my office the other day, and they were talking about relationships, and they were like, when did you know your wife was the one? And I said, when I first met her. I knew immediately, And so, 39 years later, it was a pretty good decision. It seems to have worked out. Thank you. When I read this, I was like, maybe it's just a translation. This seems kind of like a left-handed compliment. It's kind of, I'm just going to invite you to wrestle with that on your own. But live happily with the woman you love through all the meaningless days of life that God has given you under the sun. The wife God gives you is your reward for all your earthly toil. Whatever you do, do well. Okay, I'm just inviting you to think about that. Whatever you do, do well. For when you go to the grave, there will be no work or planning or knowledge or wisdom. Okay? So go ahead. Enjoy life. Enjoy the basic necessities of food and drink. Enjoy the luxuries that are available to you. Not in an irresponsible fashion because there's no hope. It's not this idea of eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow we die. It's the idea of eat, drink, and be merry because that's what God wants you to do. God has, said enjoy life. God gave you whatever He gave you, and He approves of you enjoying it. I came across this quote, and it says this, and this is just a book I used to study with. So, in view of the uncertainties of what the future may bring, whether adversity or prosperity, and in view of the certainty of death with the loss of all opportunity for enjoyment, Solomon, who's the writer of Ecclesiastes, again recommended enjoying life as God's good gift. So Solomon encourages readers to enjoy life because it's God's will for them to do so. Enjoying life is God's will for you. I'm going to invite you to let that sink in for a second. God is giving you very clear instruction. Enjoy your life. Not irresponsibly, not selfishly, not self-absorbing. Enjoy your life. And he talks about just the basic necessities. Enjoy a good meal. But he also says, hey, enjoy the luxuries that are available to you. If God provided it, then His intention is that you will enjoy it. One of the greatest ways to enjoy anything, and I'm going to invite you to think about this for a second, one of the greatest ways to enjoy anything is to be generous. And, it may shock you, I like to eat. I know a lot of you are surprised by that. You had not made a connection. That's fine. This is the thing I invite you to think about. What is one of the great ways to make an amazing meal better? Share it with somebody. You know what I mean? I've had some great meals, and they've always been better shared with somebody else. If you think about experiences in your life, fun, whatever you want to call it, what's more fun, by yourself or with other people? There's a couple of you like, by myself. That's fine, okay? I'm just telling you, one of the greatest ways to enhance enjoyment in his life is to be generous, to share with others. When I talk about these concepts on this journey, when we talk about next steps, generosity is there for a reason. It's not about just give money to the church. It's not a fundraising effort. It's the idea of living generously enriches your experience. And some of you are like, so being generous is actually selfish. Well, okay, if you want to look at it that way, fair enough. But I'm telling you, one of the great ways to enhance your life is to be generous. This is why it's such a principle throughout the Scriptures. It's the reason, God talked about it in the Old Testament. It's the reason it's talked about in the New Testament. It's the reason we believe in it as a church. One of the greatest ways to enhance your quality of life is to be generous. So some of the practical strategies for enjoying life. I'm just going to shift into my therapist mode here for a second, okay? Some of the practical strategies for enjoying life are what we call having positive experiences. Most positive experiences in life are enhanced by engaging with others. One of the greatest ways to enhance your relationship, whether it's parenting, child, social, whatever it is to actually do things that you enjoy together. Have fun. One of the things that we don't do effectively as parents, we don't play with our children. I invite you to engage with your children. Have fun. Enjoy life. Okay? Not everything is a life lesson. It's okay to just have fun and be silly and be creative and use your imagination. One of the other things I invite you to think about is what I call celebrating success, especially right now. And I know some of you are getting tired of hearing this. We don't live in a very encouraging environment. I don't know how many people walk up to you and go, man, life is great. And if you turn on any cable news channel out there, you pick whatever one you want, it's not like they come on and go, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about how amazing our world is right now. Probably not getting a whole lot of that. You get like a 45-second, human interest story at the end. So the thing is, we see what we look for. And if we keep looking for how messed up everything is, what do you think we notice? Exactly. And all I'm inviting you to think about, I'm not saying bury your head in the sand and rose-colored glasses and lie to yourself or any of that stuff, okay? Because there's some real things going on in the world. I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm just saying, I don't know, man. My life's pretty good. I got a lot of great stuff happening. And I want to focus on that. I want to talk about that. I want to celebrate that. Okay, again, I want to be responsible. I'm not going to ignore stuff. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just saying, hey, how many of your conversations are... That was almost a bad word I was going to use right there. How many of your conversations are a complaint session versus the idea of like, man, look at what God's doing here. Look at what's going on here. This is cool. That's cool. I had fun. I had this great experience. I don't know how much of that's taken place. So one of the things I invite you to think about is what is going well in your life? What can you celebrate? For those of you in community groups, I just invite you to, at some point in your evening or in your conversation is, when do we celebrate life? When do we say, hey, this is going well? These are some good things that are going on in my life, So I just invite you to think about celebrating success. One of the things that I invite people to think about, our society is really good at work. We are a production-based capitalistic society. Do more, produce more, make more, get more. That's a pretty consistent, theme in our society, okay? We're pretty good at what I call recreation. Work hard, play hard. My vacation was so hard I needed a day off from my vacation. Okay, as a culture, as a society, we are not good at relaxation, nourishing my soul. When do I seek peace? Now, relaxation doesn't have to be some sedentary event. I'm not saying a book and a hammock in the shade. That's fine. That's not, some of you go for a nature walk and it's very relaxing to you, even though it involves some level of activity. I'm not saying sedentary. I'm saying genuine relaxation where I am rested. My emotions, my soul, my brain is rested because I engage in this activity. Okay? When you think about enjoying life, having quality of life, I invite you to learn the skill of relaxation. The last thing that I'll share with you just as a practical strategy, and it goes back to, this was a slide I want to go back to, Alex, thank you, the Ecclesiastes 9-7. Whatever you do, do well. Here's the cool thing, okay? Hey, look around the room real quick. Find that person that is exactly like you. All right, I was just seeing if you're paying attention. A couple of you were like, oh, is there somebody in here? So here's the thing I invite you to think about. Every one of you is unique. You've had different life experiences. You've got different skills. You've got different training. You've got different education. You've got different passions. You've got different whatevers, okay? Do whatever you want with that. This is what I mean by the free will concept. God's not saying, okay, I need everybody to be a pastor. I need everybody to be a musician. No, he's saying, hey, whatever you do it well. Because you will find meaning and purpose and joy in that. Don't try to be somebody else. whatever you do it well. I just invite you to think about that concept. You have some, in the fancy term for it in the church, we call it a spiritual gift, okay? You have some unique something that you have both a certain level of passion for. It's important to you. You have a certain skill set for it. It comes naturally easy to you, okay? That's a gifting. God shaped your life and he created your personality so you would be good at whatever that is, okay? And, so I just invite you to figure out what that is and then invest time and energy into it, because that's your opportunity to live generously and, frankly, not put out a lot of effort because it's something you enjoy and you're naturally good at it. A lot of us are so busy trying to be something else that we lose sight of what it is that we're actually good at. So whatever you do it well. Okay, your second fill-in, or the second question I had for us is my response influenced by faith? Is my response influenced by faith? Man, you guys got to buckle up. We got a long way to go. So Ecclesiastes 9:11 through 12 says this. I've observed something else under the sun. The fastest runner doesn't always win the race, and the strongest warrior doesn't always win the battle. The wise sometimes go hungry, and the skillful are not necessarily wealthy. And those who are educated don't always lead successful lives. It's all decided by chance, by being in the right place at the right time. People can never predict when hard times might come. Like fish in a net or birds in a trap, people are caught by sudden tragedy. This is one of the things I invite you to think about, and I wrestle with this, a lot in the work that I do, and had some periods in my own personal life. If it doesn't make sense or it isn't fair, am I still at peace? When I think about the idea of the sovereignty of God, do I still believe in that when it's not going the way I think it should, or the way I want it to, or the way that makes sense to me? And I'm telling you, this is one of those great debates in faith. And it's not even just in Christianity. Most faiths consider this concept. So the Buddhists have this concept. They say pain is inevitable, suffering is avoidable. There's been a bunch of books written about why bad things happen to good people. Although, based on my own understanding of people, I'm not sure who good people is. I think most of us are sinners. Take that for what it's worth. The behaviorists, people who just study human behavior, contend that humans just want to understand. So when something bad happens, we pose this question, why? As though if there was some logical explanation, it wouldn't be so painful. Some tragic event happens, if I give you a logical explanation, be like, oh, okay. So there's just something about our avoidance of pain. And the human experience involves pain. It just does. And several teachings ago, I shared a movie quote with you from Remember the Titans. And the quote is, sometimes life's just hard for no reason at all. It just is. And this is like I shared in the very beginning. I mean, sometimes stuff just happens. Not because of choices I made, it just happened. And I don't have an explanation, okay? And I'm going to get off the hook here because Solomon didn't either. Okay, and Solomon's referenced as the wisest guy in the Bible with the exception of Jesus. I think that was kind of a given, but so if he can't explain it, then I figure I'm off the hook, okay? So I'm just again going to embrace this as mystery because faith is just that, it's faith. Okay, if God walked up here on stage, and once I recovered, and I just said, hey, God, can you just sort of explain this thing to us? And he was like, sure, Rich, as though he would address me that way, I guess, but whatever. Because if God explained the whole thing, it wouldn't be faith. It'd just be fact. It'd just be some exercise. You know what I'm saying? And so when I talk about embracing the mystery of faith, that's what I invite you to think about. Because I just think there's some value in embracing this mystery. God's sovereign, regardless of whether it makes sense, whether it be the way I do it, whether it's fair or not. Whatever it is, it happened. And like I said earlier, God wasn't surprised. God wasn't unprepared. God didn't know. It was none of that stuff, okay? He didn't lose focus. He didn't make a mistake. He wasn't absent, okay? That's all my perspective. It's not making sense to me. So because I'm a human being, then I just want to project that onto God, like somehow God should make it make sense. And the crazy thing about it is, it does. And that's what I mean by embracing the mystery. I mean, if God sat down and explained it to me, then okay. A lot of you are familiar with my story, and I'll be brief here. But so when my oldest son was 9 years old, he was diagnosed with cancer. And then he battled cancer for 6 years, and he died at age 15 in 2006. Okay, I'm not going to stand up here and try and explain to you there's some spiritual explanation. Okay, I don't know. Okay, I can tell you it sucked. I'm good with that. But I don't have some spiritual explanation for you of why this makes sense. Okay, what I can tell you is in a 6-year period, the miracles of God, God's provision, God's ongoing promise, God's assurance in my soul that it was going to make sense was what kept me going. So when I talk about this idea of faith, it's, there were moments where I was like, hey, God, I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm not even sure I want it to make sense, But God continued to sustain me, He continued to provide. Okay, He continued to honor all of His promises. Because God never promised us to be pain-free. In fact, He said life will be hard. I will take care of you in the midst of it. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, okay? I don't know if I'm at some point going to get to heaven and be like, oh, now I get it. Or if I'm going to get to heaven and be like, that was a blip on the radar, Or I'm going to get to heaven and not even know. I don't know, okay? I just have absolute faith that I will either, it will either make sense or it will, in essence, be a non-issue, okay? Because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to spend eternity in heaven like, well, that sucked. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I mean by the idea of faith, because my faith influences my acceptance of the events. And looking back on it, 18 years later, we just recently had a conversation, my wife and I, with somebody who talked about how influential that period was in her life, how it impacted her faith, how it impacted her family, how, she was able to share her faith and share the greatness of God, all through this experience, So I don't know. 18 years after my son's death, it is still impacting people's lives. That's a miracle of God. Now I get an opportunity to be a passive passive observer, or I can be an active participant. So I'm willing to share my journey. I'm willing to share the amazing things that God did. I could, spend lots and lots of times just telling you miracle upon miracle upon miracle because I have no other explanation. Okay? And like I said, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain to you 9-year-olds getting cancer that's God's plan. I can tell you God's not surprised. I can tell you that God didn't hurt when I hurt. I can tell you that God supported me, God encouraged me. And when I think about my understanding of God, my understanding of God's personality, I genuinely believe He was as pained as I was. And like I said, at some point, maybe it'll make sense. Right now, I'm like, hey, the dots don't connect, God. I'm just going to place my faith in you. I'm just going to stay active in my pursuit of faith. So the last thing I'll share with you, or the last fill-in is the last question is my response influenced by wisdom of God? So in Ecclesiastes 9:13 through 18, it says this. Here's another bit of wisdom that has impressed me as I've watched the way our world works. There was a small town with only a few people, and a great king came with his army and besieged it. A poor wise man knew how to save the town, and so it was rescued. But afterward, no one thought to thank him. So even though wisdom is better than strength, those who are wise will be despised if they are poor. What they say will not be appreciated for long. Better to hear the quiet words of a wise person than the shouts of a foolish king. Better to have wisdom than weapons of war. But one sinner can destroy much that is good. Now, when I talk about wisdom of God, and maybe this addresses a little bit of the last point that I was trying to share with you, as I mentioned in the beginning, we live on a planet with 8 billion other people. And I think most of them are, and I don't mean malicious or whatever, I just think most of us are living unaware and pretty self-absorbed. And like I said, I think we live in this idea of, in the moment of crisis, I'm real receptive to input. And then the crisis is over, in essence, I go back to normal. And I forget about all the amazing things that happened, or, in this story, the influence of the wise man. I'm just back to my normal. So I go back to stimuli response. Excuse me. And I don't even think it's that we don't consider gratitude. I think, maybe in the moment we're like, hey, thanks, whatever the case is. I just don't think we live with enough intentionality to say, hey, what actually happened? And this is what I mean by what is it that I'm looking for? And this is what I mean by being intentionally active, okay? So the wisdom of God, okay, and the reason I like this phrase is it's very fragile, okay, as it indicates in the reading there. But, and I think a lot of the times I'm my own worst enemy. But the wisdom of God is the idea of, do I understand God's nature? Have I spent enough time actively pursuing an understanding of God that I recognize, in essence, his personality? Have I spent enough time studying the promises of God that I understand the reasons I have assurance? What is it that supports my faith? So when I say wisdom of God, I mean, and as best as I can, as a human being, it's just, do I recognize all of his promises? Do I actively allow my faith to be influenced, by him? His promises, his assurances. Do I understand God? If you go back to the very beginning when I asked you to think about, an experiential activity, this is what I'm inviting you to think about. Do you actually experience a sense of security based on your understanding of God? Does your wisdom of God influence the way you feel and the way you interact with God? Because if God's just this killjoy, authoritarian, controlling, mad deity, I don't know what kind of relationship that is. If God is this loving, encouraging, nurturing, caring Father, that probably influences the way I think about things. That probably influences the way I interact with people. So I'm just inviting you to think about, as you consider the wisdom of God. I mean, it's not just about, reading the Bible for facts and figures and being able to memorize Scripture. Not that those things are bad. It's just the idea of, is this really helping me understand the personality? Do I really connect with God in a relationship? I mean, that's a word we use a lot. But I think a lot of us are like, well, I don't know what that means between me and God. So that's what I invite you to think about when you think about the wisdom of God is, am I on a journey to more understand who he actually is? Because when he makes these promises, of comfort and joy and peace and, all the things that he talks about, I mean, that's reflective of his personality. That's quote unquote who God is. And am I pursuing a relationship with that? Or am I, pursuing a relationship with, basically the fun police? So I just invite you to think about, when you think about this concept of wisdom of God, is what do I understand about God? I want to just share one last thought with you, so I'm going to skip ahead here, Alex. So Jason introduced it, and Nick talked about it last week, but I just want to see it in print again. And this is a Westminster Catechism. It's a portion of it. It's not the whole thing. There's a whole bunch more than this. But man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. As you think about how you respond to the world we live in, is this what is influencing it? Is your response to the world you live in influenced by your pursuit of glorifying God and enjoying him forever? Is that what influences your response? Because if you go back to the question I posed, am I active in my faith, and is my faith influenced by these concepts of my desire to glorify God and to enjoy him forever? Because you were created, okay? And I just, if you dozed off, come on back. You were created by the creator of the universe. You were created to enjoy God. And part of enjoying God means enjoying the life you're in right now in this moment. And like I said, one of the most effective ways to do that is to live generously. So as you go about this week, this is what I'm inviting you to think about. Is this what's influencing my response to the world I live in? Because I don't control anything. I don't control other people's behavior. I don't control the weather. I don't control the economy. I don't control the political outcome. I control my response to it. One of the phrases I like people to think about is there's 8 billion people on this planet. I control one of them. And I want to be very intentional, very active in my participation about how I control that one person. And I want that to be influenced by spiritual concepts. So I'm just inviting you to think about what's going to influence you this morning. I'd like to close with prayer. Father God, we don't control the world we live in. And sometimes it doesn't seem like there's a lot of control anywhere. And yet the entire time, from the very beginning of creation, you have been sovereign. You've been in charge. You've known exactly what was going to happen. And Father, those are the concepts that we want to influence our decision making. Those are the concepts that we want to influence the way we interact with other human beings. Those are the concepts that we want to have influence our decision making and our quality of life. And I just pray, Father God, that you do just help us to choose joy and faith and wisdom and understanding of you. I say this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Rich. All right, if you would like prayer, we have an amazing team that will be under the crosses for prayer if you would like that. If you'd like to come over and join a community or need help with your app or talk to the guy that's in charge of the Men's Connect, please come talk to us under the Next Step sign. I want to invite you all back tonight at 6 p.m. for Theology for Everyone with Islam and Judaism, and also have a great afternoon glorifying God and enjoying Him forever. Have a great day.